Across the country, murders are up. Milwaukee, for example, has set homicide records for 3 years in a row. Now, with the 3 recent highly public national mass murders in Idaho, Colorado, and Virginia, Democrats are again not letting a crisis go to waste. Biden spent his Thanksgiving in Nantucket, Massachusetts, again pushing for an assault rifle ban. The Democrats know that they don't have the votes, so they're back to the idea, the dreadful idea that they had before and didn't work, of defunding the police.
The county in which this shooting happened is a so-called Second Amendment sanctuary state. And I think the country's going to have to learn about what's going on in this country. The majority of counties in this country have declared that they are not going to enforce state and federal gun laws. They have decided that they are going to essentially refuse to implement laws that are on the books. That is a growing problem in this country. And I think we're going to have a conversation about that in the United States Senate. Do we want to continue to supply funding to law enforcement in counties that refuse to implement state and federal gun laws?
Unbelievable. But as one former federal prosecutor, Will Scharf, tweeted, quote, "A very small number of criminals commit almost all the crime, especially violent crime. Each shooter you take off the streets, each dealer, each thug means likely dozens of fewer felony offenses per year." So pulling funding from police will only make the problems worse. So let's get into this problem with our crime panel. I'm happy to be joined by former federal prosecutor Will Scharf and North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Great to be here, Jen. Thanks a lot for having us.
Oh, we appreciate it. Will, let me ask you this. Senator Murphy, he's got a problem with the Second Amendment sanctuary cities, which adheres to the Constitution, but he's got no problem with every other kind of sanctuary city that allows criminals, illegal aliens, to just run amok. What do you make of this?
You called it exactly right, Jen. This is another example of the Democrats never letting a crisis go to waste. This has nothing to do with crime. This has nothing to do with mass shootings. This has to do with the radical left wanting to come after the Second Amendment and wanting to come after law-abiding Americans' gun rights. And if you talk to any police officer, any violent crime prosecutor anywhere in the country, they'll tell you that a vast majority of violent crime takes place either with stolen firearms or with firearms that are already unlawfully owned. So the idea that more laws are what's needed, or different enforcement of federal spending prerogatives, it's just garbage. And this is just another attempt by the radical left to come after Americans' guns.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, President Biden talked about semi-automatics having no redeeming value, but almost all firearms now are semi-automatic. And the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, she had to walk that back today. Listen.
Did the president misspeak, or does he in fact want to ban all semi-automatic guns?
No, he was talking about assault weapons. That's what he was talking about.
Do you think there's more here at play than the White House is leading us to believe?
Of course this is, and you can file this entire thing under the category of you cannot make this stuff up. Here we have this politician sitting on national television saying that talking about this unbelievable, this garbage that he is saying, when we have things like the president is witnessing the violent effects of defunding the police, of bail reform. He's witnessing these things, but yet and still he calls law-abiding gun owners in America sick for owning semi-automatic weapons. Again, you could just file this entire episode under the title of things that you cannot make up. The absolute hypocrisy of the left is stunning, and the American people have rejected it time and time again, and they continue to preach this. Every piece of legislation that has come down the pike that has affected crime negatively has been pushed by these leftists, and they continue to stand by it, continue to push it, and they continue to vilify law-abiding Americans and our Constitution. We got to continue to push against it and make sure that we get these folks out of office.
Yeah. Will, I want to ask you something, shifting gears a little bit here, but in a tweet thread that you put out last week about the lessons you learned on the job in St. Louis, you said this. You said fentanyl is killing far more people than is being reported. There is no heroin left in St. Louis. It's all fentanyl, and it's all deadly. And dealers are regularly lacing cocaine and other drugs with this stuff. I mean, when you look at the numbers, it's more than what's being reported. By what factor are we talking about? Is it even close to the numbers that we're hearing?
So the reported numbers themselves are terrifying, Jen. Last year we had over 100,000 overdose deaths in the United States of America, a great majority of which are fentanyl related. That's up twofold since 2015. This is just a massive increase in the drug epidemic that we've seen in a very short period of time, and we know where the stuff's coming from. It's being shipped from China directly here. It's being shipped from China to Mexico, where it's cooked in labs and then trucked across the border. Until we control our border and until we get control of our ports of entry, Americans are going to continue to die. And the lack of attention to this issue by policymakers, both in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere, it's a tragedy, and it's a human tragedy.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling why it's not getting more attention from Washington right now, particularly this administration. It would go such a long way. But of course, why acknowledge what's happening with our porous open border? I don't have a lot of time left, but Mark, I do want to ask you about this. In New York City, where I'm sitting right now, crime is going through the roof. Convictions, though, are falling. They're now at 51%, and you've got the district attorney here, Alvin Bragg, who's downgrading more than half of all felonies to misdemeanors. He only has a 29% success rate for misdemeanor convictions. The game plan for these liberal attorneys, it goes beyond just New York. We've seen it in a number of cities, but they win re-elections somehow. Why is that?
I don't think that the people in their areas have had enough of a wake-up call, and I just can't understand it. Crime in those areas is out of control. I have spoken to people in person who have told me they're packing up their belongings and they are leaving because it's no longer safe to be on the streets. And then they put people like this in charge. It's mind-numbing, and it's just another thing you can file under that same old moniker. Things that you cannot make up. In a city filled with crime, you have a prosecutor who is now continuing to de-escalate his attempts to thwart that crime.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your mind around it. You walk on the streets here in New York and you're constantly looking over your shoulder. A lot of people feel that way, especially with these random crimes that happen here and in a lot of other cities. Hopefully people will start paying attention. Will Scharf and Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having us.